So the BOK has announced that it will hold its interest rate steady. For more on what's behind this decision, we're joined by Professor Shin Se Don, professor at Division of Business Economics at Sookmyung Women's University.
Good
Professor
morning.
Shin, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning.
So the Bank of Korea has decided to keep its benchmark interest rate at 2.5%. What's behind this decision, and how will this affect the South Korean housing market?
Well, it is fairly anticipated by the market that, almost 90% of the analysts in the market expected that there will be no rate lowering this time. And primarily the reason I think should be the rising inflation in apartment price, especially in the Seoul, Gangnam area, which has been showing more than 10% year-over-year rate of increase, and that is, I think, almost the highest in almost 20 years, except for 2017, 2018. So a fairly high inflation in apartment price in Seoul. I think that is the prime reason for the Bank of Korea to stay put in the rate. And to the question whether the rate will be cut in the near future, that I think depends upon the future course of price of apartment, especially in the Seoul area.
Right, and like you said, many expected the rate will be kept steady this month, but some have been saying that the central bank needs to lower the rate. Why is this, and when can we expect further rate cuts in the near future?
I think as far as I am concerned, I think the Bank of Korea made a huge mistake in last May when they lowered the rate by 25 basis points, because at the time, in the month of May, there has been already a significant move in the prices of apartment in the Seoul area. So I think the Bank of Korea should not have lowered the rate in the month of May. So that, I think, is the main mistake by the Bank of Korea. And therefore, as long as current situation in the price of inflation in the apartment price continues, there's very little room for the Bank of Korea to lower the rate either in August or in September. So I think the future course of interest rate depends upon the price of apartment prices in Seoul, and we have to look at what kind of measures, other measures like more supply in the area, and also a lot of regulations regarding apartment loans, whether that could be successful in cooling down the price. In that case, I think, when the other measures are successful in cooling down the prices of apartment in the Seoul area, I think there is a room for the Bank of Korea to lower the rate down the road in 2025. But for me, I think it is pretty not sure, because already interest rate is too low. 2.5% is about 200 basis points lower than the United States. I think it's pretty low, and there's a lot of significant kind of a factor, causing the inflation in the apartment price to rise in the future.
I see. And U.S. tariffs are another very important factor in shaping the South Korean economy. So with the Trump administration threatening to impose 25% tariffs on South Korean goods, this is expected to significantly impact the Korean companies and the economy, right?
Oh, yeah. It is a formidable tariff, 25% tariff. I think it's historically high for Korean exports in major peacetime Korean history. I think in my calculation, it could reduce export to the United States by 1/4, which is about between 30 and 40 billion dollar, which is about the 5% of total Korean export to the world. And if our export to the United States fall by $300 billion, that amounts to 2.5 percentage point in economic growth for Korea. So I think that's a pretty significant impact for Korean economic growth, as well as the revenue making from export revenues.
Right. And talks on next year's minimum wage are underway right now, and it looks like it will be finalized today. How is this likely to affect the domestic economy?
well, at the start, the gap between the labor and the management has been so huge. So it was almost, kind of threatening, for the deal making in the minimum wage. But fortunately, after 12, round of negotiations, the gap has been lowered between 10,440 and 10,210. So the gap is about 201. And I think the settlement could be reached in between, 440 and 210. So that amounts to 10,300, in which case the rate of increase in the minimum wage will be about a little more than 2%. And if the minimum wage is increased by a little more than 2%, I think that is sustainable on both sides. Of course, there should be a lot of complaints in the labor side, but as far as management is concerned, about 2 percentage point increase in the minimum wage is well within in the scope that they could manage. So I think it is pretty fortunate for this government to be able to settle in between, 10,440 and 10,210, which is pretty good for Korean economy in near future.
I see. All right. We'll have to see how it goes. Professor Shin, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.